to the Wonderman Nation live gameplay demo, 4th of June, 2023. So thank you everyone for joining us. Now, before I get too far into the details, let me just, I just want to make sure that everyone has the stream working and everyone can see me and hear me okay. I don't want to get like 10 minutes in and find out that the stream hasn't worked for some reason, right? So let's just, I'll type it in the chat here. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. Everyone saying they can see me, hear me. For some reason on my side, I can't see. Okay, yeah, I can see that now. Okay, cool. All right. So we're good. Everyone says it's good. Okay, so let's kick off. All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for confirming that. All right, so where do we start? So, all right, so it's been a bit of a year with development. Okay, so let's go back to the last AMA where we chatted about the previous game build and our decision to stop that and restart this one. So yeah, I won't go too far into the additional details of that. I mean, as in, like, we've spoken about that kind of enough already. But one thing I want to say is we wanted to, for this stream, I wanted to kind of show the previous build and show the current build, so you can kind of see them side by side. That was the initial intention, because that previous build went for about 8 months, 7 to 8 months, and this current one's been about the same amount of time, like starting from scratch, with a different engine and sort of bit of a similar technology stack, but some differences in the technology stack. But yeah, so I chatted with the team about that last week, and we kind of decided that maybe we just keep this stream here focused on the new build, so that we're not sort of, because we're quite a bit further ahead with our new build than the previous build anyway. So same amount of time, but like development wise, we're a lot further ahead. So we don't want to sort of like waste too much time talking about that old build. But again, if people want to see that just for historical fact, then we can show that in a later video. That's no problem. But nothing I mentioned in the previous AMA was that it could be good to do a bit of a sort of game dev 101. So that could be still content for another video. But I might touch on that a little bit in this one as well, just in like a specific part like to do with characters, I think, because I think the character pipeline is a very interesting one. So you guys can sort of see, like, it's kind of easy to look at the final result and go, well, you know, that's obvious that works that way. But yeah, as a team can attest to, like, there was quite a few times where we thought it wasn't possible internally, but we managed to do it. So it's quite a bit of a pipeline between, like, you know, getting the art to look good and then getting the design to sort of work with the art in terms of like DNA breeding, etc. And then getting that sort of working into the technical pipeline with DNA and abilities and stats and how that flows through, and then sort of bringing that back around to sort of seeing how that connects to the creatures and make sure they still look right. So that would be a good place for us to start, I think. What else before we get into it? I want to kind of give a bit of an intro. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was in terms of production versus release. I wanted to do this video for a while. So as you guys in our community know, I've kind of wanted to do this for the last sort of 2 to 3 months. But there are two things there. So one was that, like, there was a few little kind of, you know, just like production things we wanted to add. So like we have a lot of like placeholder art in the game. Typically it's quite polished now, but typically when you're developing a game, you've got like some placeholder things here and there that you just sort of like will kind of replace later on. But you sort of like go through to get things working. That's kind of like the alpha through beta through release kind of pipeline. So we kind of wanted to get a few of those things just polished up, because it's kind of like what we call like low hanging fruit, right? So we can kind of replace some of that art and get it to look a bit better, for not too much effort. But then also it's a bit of a switch going between production and release. So when you're in production, you're adding features and things are breaking, you're fixing them, so that's kind of just the general cycle. But when you go to release, you've got to spend a lot more time bug fixing, checking, you know, going through the gameplay loops to make sure that everything's rock solid. So it's been a bit of a sort of not a bad disruption, but it's been a bit of a disruption for our progress to kind of switch between production and to release in this kind of middle alpha stage. But it's kind of been good in a lot of ways too, because it's kind of meant that we've gotten the build from our sort of, we'll talk about sort of the front end, back end, the servers, but we've taken a build from the back end server where we sort of accessed it directly to putting into Pavilion and getting that working through Pavilion in iframes on the web build, because we have the client of Pavilion and the web build of Pavilion. and going through some of that gameplay user experience loops and make sure that those things are working. So yeah, it's a great chance for us to fix some of the bugs that we found through that process. Yeah, another thing that I'll show off, it's kind of, if you go into the description of this video, you'll see at the bottom I've kind of mentioned the replay system. So, but yeah, in preparing for this video, it sort of led us to create this really quite cool, unique replay system where we can kind of like go through these battles after a battle, just using a battle ID, and step through each event, so that we can kind of validate a battle and then find bugs. So that's kind of, we kind of end up building a feature just to do this video and to solve some of those bugs. All right, so let's without further ado, let's talk about some of the creature stuff. So all right, let me just go to my OBS here and turn on the creature slideshow. All right, cool. So before we get into, so look, I'll kind of reiterate, I am going to be showing live gameplay footage in this video, but we'll be going through the creatures, looking at the creature design process, and we're looking at the creatures on chain, on Phantasma, and on other chains for our cross-chain swaps, and then we'll be bringing it into like the gameplay and going to battles and breeding, etc. Right? So we'll be kind of going through a bit of that loop. Okay, so but starting here, so in terms of the I'll zoom in a little bit on this. In terms of the creature breeding and how parts all connect with the creatures, it was quite an interesting process for us to go through the visuals of how that would look. So I also wanted to kind of run through a few of these early concepts that we did right through to some of our production stuff through our back end. Yeah. So as you can see through here, we kind of went through these iterations of like, well, you know, which parts for each creature flow through. Like, you know, do we have like just the faces? Do we have faces and bodies? Do we have like mouths? Do we have underneath the mouths? Like how are the legs and arms separated? You know, how do these come through different breeds? How do they all attach? So I won't go through every single version of those in every iteration, but you can kind of see like here's kind of some of the explorations we did on different body parts. That's with like separation between heads and mouths, etc. But then we start kind of getting into kind of more like where we've gotten to now. Still a few interesting explorations there, but you can kind of see we're still exploring some jaws from different creatures. So the mouths, there's a separate piece there that could come off. But you can kind of see this kind of taking more of the shape of what you've kind of will see in the game. Here we kind of settled on having different mouths, like mouths as an image, as opposed to like a separate piece, like a separate kind of body part, and then, you know, eyes as well as a separate part, but then like the bodies and head are all kind of like the one unit in this example. So there's no like separate jaw. But we're still kind of exploring things around, you know, do the eye stalks go with the snail or do they attach to the bodies, etc. And then how do the arms all attach? And then we explore like kind of the positions. So one thing that we found through these explorations here is around the sort of characters of each sort of incoming and outgoing creature. So where do the eyes attach and how do they attach? Because you've also got like the attachment points, like Y height and X position from the incoming creature and the bred creature, so the body and the eyes, right? So we're trying to figure out the balance between that. So we kind of end up using a bit of a blend between the two, so that you've got some of the character from the eyes, because if the eyes come in and attach to the body position, then it kind of gives the character of the body as opposed to the eyes of the creature that's being bred in. So we use these kind of different kind of like ways of kind of working out which positions to take from each. Again, I won't go into like all the specifics, but you can kind of see some of the kind of guidelines for how we kind of thought that would work there. So with the snake eyes attaching closer together, or snail eyes or toad eyes kind of attaching further apart. So you can kind of see how the toad character there is quite consistent across those bred creatures, and getting those to match up on all the different bodies so that they don't sort of overhang on the snake's head and the snail's head and all that sort of stuff. So I probably said kind of enough about that, I guess. Like these are just some more explorations for us to do those in art before we went into the sort of the tech sides of things. So it's just more explorations and big sort of like character sheets. I'll just zoom in on that. I don't know why my mouse isn't moving that up and down, but you get the point. All right, so the other thing I'll mention is the spreadsheet. So the way these connect, so we've got, as you guys know, if you're already familiar with Wonderman Nation, we've got this DNA system. So as you breed creatures, stats and abilities come in from all the different creatures. That's the parents of a new bred creature, but then also the grandparents. So there's two different sort of avenues of things for us to think about there. There's the stats, so that's kind of like, we'll look at those in Pavilion later on, but that's kind of like the hit points, defense, sight, stamina, all of those kinds of like just direct attack stats. And then there's the abilities. So abilities are the things like flying, for example. So a bird can fly into the air, whereas other ground creatures can't. And so then looking at, you know, as you breed different creatures, how those stats come into the breed, and then how the different body parts come into those breeds, and how they sort of affect both the stats and the abilities. So this is one of the examples of us kind of working out the mathematics behind like how different body parts, depending on which ones we have, we kind of, as I said before, we kind of like end up combining a lot of these things together. So some of these things started out as separate pieces, became one, but then like what sort of weight does each body part have to the incoming stats of the new bred creature, and then sort of how do they all kind of normalize to make a complete creature. I won't show the ability spreadsheet at this point because we can't kind of give too much of our data away, as you can imagine. Probably we can release some of the older versions maybe once we've released the game. But essentially you can imagine that like say a bird might have a special attack and might be able to kind of like fly in and attack other creatures. And for certain attacks, it might need wings and a beak for that attack, right? So if you've got a new creature that's bred and it's got wings and a tail, then it might be able to fly, but it won't. If it doesn't have the beak, then it won't be able to do that sort of special kind of fly dive attack. So we've got different abilities that sort of spread between the different limbs, so depending on what parts you get different abilities with the new creatures. Okay, and then the next thing I was going to quickly show was the. Once we had a bit of a guideline for how we wanted these creatures to look, we then went into the back end to sort of pump those out. So we'd just pump out like hundreds of these at a time to just sort of see like what our data would create out of these creatures and find the issues, so we could kind of address all of those in a batch, and then review and revise and punch them out again. So flicking through these, you kind of see that they actually look quite good for the most part. There are things like, maybe mouth, for the wasp mouth on the snake is a bit too high. These mouths kind of hanging off, maybe needing a bit of rotation, etc. And layering, and like these legs and arms like being up too high up behind the wing. So just adjusting all of the attachment points for the different limbs on the creatures and on the limbs that are coming in. So we can kind of go through. Let me just close that. So I'll show you probably the feedback. So here's probably just a good place to look. So we did like dozens of iterations of those over the course of a few months. I just kind of quickly sort of scroll through these. So these are kind of the problem examples. So when we'd find problems, we'd go through these and identify those, and based on each problem that we saw, would adjust like the layering, positioning, rotation, etc., etc. And coming up with rules, like a snake always has to have a tail. So if it's breeding with another creature that doesn't have a tail, then it should always keep its own, etc., etc. All right, so you can kind of see some of the development that we went through, and as you can imagine, with possibly like millions of combinations of different creatures, we had to run a whole lot of tests with those to make sure that they were going to work in all cases. All right. So let me just turn off that. All right. So so let's go into Pavilion now. So we'll do the. Let's go to inventory. Let's make sure. Okay. Alrighty, so what I'll do is I've got, so in the back window here, we've got the Pavilion desktop, sorry, the Pavilion, that's the web version. And then behind me, I'll put the Pavilion desktop app. So these are like, yeah, so this is the Pavilion desktop, right, which is one sort of version of the build. So I've got one account in here. I don't know if you can sort of see my account names in there, but these are two different accounts. So these are the two accounts that'll be battling each other. But also before we do that, I'll show you some of the breeding stuff so you can see it working in both versions. And then we can click through some of the stats online, so you can see these things online. You can sort of see the chain data. You can see all of the stats, etc. You can see it on different chains. All right. So what else? What else? I'll show you this one. So okay, so here we have an example of a bred creature. So this is a toad and a spider, obviously. So if we inspect these creatures, we can see that they've got. Let's check out. What's a good example? Stop pulling the data in 2 seconds, guys. So we've got like stamina stats. So for some of these, this is still work in progress. So sometimes it doesn't pull the full data in. Okay, so this one has the full data. So one thing I'll say is we've got different versions of the NFT. So we've got like obviously test versions of the NFT. So these are our test versions of the NFT. So depending on when some of these were minted, some of them have the data and some of them don't. But here's an example of one that has the data. So you can see down here it's got its different stats for all its. Some of these are cut off behind me. I can just turn off that window there. Okay, so yeah, you can see this one's got all the stats for stamina, luck, speed, attack, defense, evasive, sight, smell, and hearing. So these are all the stats that like basically dictate like how well that character attacks, how well it defends, how well it works in cover, how it attacks from different heights and locations in the environment. And then you've got like the things that the actions that it can do, which are kind of like behind me. Yeah, and then you've got a few different stats down the bottom, like who its parents were, what food it was bred with, what kind of items it can find, and whether underneath there it says like whether it can climb or yeah, find items, etc. and such. All right, so let's go to. I want to breed creatures on both accounts. So I'll bring up the other desktop. Okay, so yeah, you see them in the inventory for both here. You can see we've got different items in my inventory. Okay, so let's launch the game. Okay. All right, cool. So I do breeding in one. So I've got like two different windows of different clients here. So yeah, one is the main window, one you can see behind me. Okay. Okay, so let's go into the. I'll make this one full screen. All right. Okay, so my two accounts here are 2211 and 22 on the other one, which you can probably see. So I'm going to go into the creature breeder on both. Before I start the breeding, I'll just show. So this is the inventory for both of these up here. So these got a replicated between Pavilion reading on chain and the web client reading on chain. So you can see all of the creatures that I've got. So some of these are Genesis creatures, and then other ones are the bred creatures. All right, so these are all the creatures that I have in my inventory. This account over here that I'm scrolling through, this one doesn't have as many creatures. Some of those thumbnails are still loading in. Yeah, so one has a lot more than the other. Okay, so let's just try some breeds. And I kind of also wanted to maybe put it out to the community. If anyone has like, specific breeds they want me to try, just out of curiosity, then I'm happy to do that. You just put that into the chat. So I'll just do a couple of breeds to start, and then you guys can pipe in if you want me to try something out. Okay, so in here we've got all our different creatures, so we can scroll through like this. So what should I do? Let's do a maybe let's do a bird with a snail. Okay, so we've got our different food that we can add to this breed. So the food does a few different things. So we've got, like, depending, actually I'll probably talk about the emoticons up here first actually. So you can see with different breeds, we've got different emoticons that show how much they like to breed together. And this is kind of, in some ways, kind of what you'd possibly expect. So things that are kind of, very similar to each other, maybe, quite a lot more attracted to each other. But it actually serves a really good gameplay purpose as well. So you'll see, for example, if you look down here at the nectar required to breed certain creatures, so creatures that find each other really repulsive, like a bird and a toad, the nectar cost for breeding those is a lot more. Whereas if creatures are like really attracted to each other because they're very much the same, then the nectar cost is lower. But also the reason why that is because if you can imagine that, a bird and a toad have very different abilities, and they've got very different sort of areas of the map that they can reach. We kind of want to make sure that people aren't sort of taking a high defensive character and a high offensive character and breeding together to get firstly to kind of get the ultimate character. We have to really balance that out. But also we're kind of adding a cost to that. So if you want to breed like a character that could have like really different unique abilities, then there's a bit of an extra cost and time for that. So that's reflected in the nectar cost, but it's also the time that it takes to do the breed. So you can see like the bird and the wasp take 64 minutes in this example, so these times aren't final, whereas the bird and the toad take 5 hours. And then using the food, if you add food to that breed, that will speed things up as well. So it changes the breed time, but that also will affect the genetics and some of the outcomes, which we will never kind of actually publicly mention what those are. People can kind of go off and figure those out themselves. And I'll touch on some of the breeding as a service things later on too. All right, so because that's going to be like a whole other part of the game. Anyway, but we'll talk about this bit first. Okay, so I'm going to breed the bird and the toad. So we'll have the confirmation box here. We can give this a name. So we'll call it a bode. We'll call it bode 1. It's a bird toad. All right. So there will be a time frame for that, but for our test NFTs, we're just doing these instantly so that we can obviously do that for testing, because if we have to test these over the period of days, it's going to make our testing slower. Okay, so we'll do a different one here with a slice of pizza. Now we'll call that bode 2, and we'll try this next one with a watermelon. Okay. Bode 3. Okay, go, give it. All right, we'll go over to the other client now. So this is the one that, let me just check the OBS stream. So yeah, this is the one on the main window. Okay, this one's got a lot of rabbits because they've been breeding like rabbits. Okay, let's go. So here's one that I bred earlier, obviously. A spider and a rabbit. Let's try. There are so many rabbits. You know what? We can try a toad with a bred creature that's already been bred as a spider and a rabbit. Okay, let's add a banana to that. We can call that a Toida 1. So we'll do a few of these as well, so everyone can sort of see the different randomness of the breeds. And yeah, obviously being random, sometimes they can come out like completely different. Other times they can actually all be a bit similar. It just depends on what you get on the day. All right, it's all that Toyota 3. All right, cool. Okay, so let's go back to, actually, let me just double check if anyone in the chat has like, anyone got any specific Bird octopus. Somebody said, okay, cool. All right, let me try to do a bird octopus. I said I'll do one if somebody asked, and somebody's asked. All right, so let me find an octopus. Oh, sorry, a bird and octopus, right? So there's a bird. This account does have an octopus. There he is. Or she. Ah, there's a bird. All right, cool. Okay, so again, like I mentioned before, because birds and octopus, so a bird is an air character, and the octopus obviously has water abilities. So these are two very different creatures with very different stats and very different abilities. So yeah, the time to breed these is higher, and it costs more nectar. So we'll add one of these. We'll add one of these. We'll do the yesterday cooked pizza to this one, because I think a bird and an octopus would love that. And we'll call this an octurd. I'll do a few of these. I'll do a few so we can kind of see a few different versions. And again, I'll do it with some different food. Pineapple. Why not? And an apple. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so let's close this screen now. Let's go back to home. All right, so we've got notifications for our bred creatures. So let's go and collect. Octopus bird. Oh, I actually did an octopus bird earlier on. There you go. All right, so there's our octopus bird. So you might notice that these, I'll mention the kind of babiness of them. And I guess I can mention the crashing feature now too. So there's a feature that we've added recently in the last month that wasn't in our original game design. But we think it's got a lot of potential. So it's essentially kind of what you can see on the screen. So we've got adding more of a Pokemon slash Tamagotchi creature raising part to the game. So when you first breed a creature, it comes out as a little cute or not so cute, depending on your point of view of what you can see in front of you. Creature. So then that's kind of not ready for battle straight away. And then once you've got those creatures, you take them into what we're kind of currently calling a crèche system, where you have some land and you have a barn, and you feed your creatures and pat them and train them and give them training equipment, and then even socializing them with other creatures and other players to have them kind of grow up and raise them in a certain way. So it's kind of like a very Sims way to sort of like influence your breed. So you might get a certain breed out of the box, but then that breed's got different potentials depending on how you want to breed that. So that's a pretty cool, exciting feature that we've added recently. All right, let's collect a few of these. Okay, so there's my toad bird. It's a bit funky looking. It's another toad bird. So it actually looks quite similar to the previous one. So yeah, sometimes they come out very similar, and other times they come out like completely different with a different body. Maybe let's go to the other one and collect some of its creatures as well. So this one had, this one had the spider rabbit crossing with the toad. Let's collect that. It's actually quite cute. Okay, so you can see, okay, that one's actually a really good example, because this doesn't even happen always. So, okay, so here's a good example of if you have a creature that's bred between like 3 or more, so it could be like, once you've got a few different generations, it could be dozens, but if you've got a creature that's got like toad, rabbit and spider genetics in it, its stats, which are not necessarily like always visible in the body parts, but its stats will always be a blend between those incoming creatures, which is like a random part of the sort of DNA, so it won't always be the same each time. It's always a bit randomized. So the stats will always be the same, but the actual body parts won't always be there. So yeah, so you might have a toad, a spider, and a rabbit in terms of its genomes, in terms of its stats, but in terms of its actual like visible body limbs, you won't always get one of each of those. But in this example, we've got the the toad body, the toad body, toad arms, toad eyes. We've got the rabbit mouth. We potentially have a rabbit tail, but it's going to be really small and hard to see, so we don't know about the tail, and it may or may not have that. But then it's got the spider legs. So those different body parts will give it different abilities. So having for example, like the toad's got like a special kind of belch ability, so that ability will be gone with the rabbit mouth, so it'll lose one ability, but then the spider legs will give it a different ability to climb that the toad wouldn't have had. So it's going to have sort of like some trade-offs in those different limb connections. Okay, so this is okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so this actually gave us the same, very, very similar one again, because we've kind of bred the same one a few times there. And this should be, yeah, okay, so there you go, there's another example. So we're kind of breeding the same creature a few different times, and in this example we've got like all spider legs, we've got the toad mouth, and we've got the rabbit ears. So this example would actually have, ability-wise, it would have more of the climbing ability that's incoming with the spider. It would still have the toad belching special attacks because it's got the body and the mouth, and it would obtain the rabbit's hearing stats and abilities. So yeah, so this one would actually be a pretty interesting character to play with. Let's collect these other three that we did here. Okay, so that's the octopus birdie, which actually looks similar to one of the first ones we had. And that one came out again, so that one's like happened a couple of different times. Okay, and here's another octopus bird. So yeah, so that's another example of basically like the exact opposite of the last one, where you've got the bird body with the octopus eyes. So yeah, so this one's going to be sort of mostly bird stats and abilities, but it's going to have some of the octopus eye stats and octopus eye abilities. All right, so let's go, before we jump into the game, let's go back to our inventories. So before we did these breeds, we were up to, so one of these accounts had breeds 96 and 97, like mint number 96 and 97, and the other one had numbers 98 and 99. So we'll grab the new ones that we just did, so we'll just refresh our inventories there. I'll make a quick mention that these NFTs that come up with this sort of random, like funky looking sort of humanoid bot icon, so that's a AI thing. So I'll show you in our player stats, we've got some AI in the background that generates a thumbnail of stuff if the thumbnail doesn't exist on the server when it's called. So obviously we can kind of clear our cache and get those thumbnails where they don't exist. But we're doing this very quickly on this. We're trying to mint instantly and get thumbnails instantly. So that's what those thumbnails are. Those creatures do exist, but they just like not having a thumbnail generated before we've asked for them. So, all right. So out of these ones, so mint number 100, that was one of our new ones. That was one of our bird breeds, which actually came out with mostly bird. Let's get back to the inventory. Let's look at our octurd number 1. Okay, so this is the one that we just bred now. You can see let me just see, you can see its birthday. I can see its birthday here. I can click on a web page to open that up. Yeah, you can maybe you can see the birthday. It's just kind of down here, so it says 4th of June, 2023. We'll open that one up in a web page. That's probably a good opportunity to show this. Okay, so here's our octurd number 1. Let's go down to its birthday. So this was born on Sunday, 4th of June. It's currently living on Phantasma chain. We've got a breeder ID, unique ID, and then we've got the parents of this. We've got the food that was bred with. And then down here we have the stats for where it's thumbnail for its image, and then where this lives, like where you can see this on in Pavilion, and then where it is on the Wonderman Nation server. you can look at the, yeah, so you can sort of look at the parents as well. So let's open the parents up. Okay, so there's the parents. You can see my cursor there. Okay, so bird and octopus. So these are the two parents of this new bred creature. And we can kind of see some of the abilities that has come across. Let's scroll down. Okay, so let's have a quick look. So let's say like poison, squeeze, soak, or super soak. Assuming you can see that the bird doesn't have that. Yeah, so you can see that this new Octo doesn't have some of those abilities that the octopus had. Doesn't have all of them because it doesn't have all of the body parts, but has some of the sting abilities. Super sting, spread sting, deadly sting. Let's double check. So the octopus, where did those sting ones come from? It's actually coming from the bird at the moment. So it's got some sting attacks. So those were brought in to the child from the bird. Yeah, and it's also getting the big strike, etc. Okay, so that's that. I guess like we can go through a couple of the other ones just quickly. Okay, so the one created. So that was this one that I opened up was one created on the Pavilion client. Here's our mint number 105. This one was created on the web client. Okay, so this is an example where it doesn't populate the details here, but I can see this on Phantasma chain. So just push this NFT ID into here so we can see that creature. Okay, so there's a Toida. So yeah, once again, like you can see what stats it has, what abilities it has, and then its parents. So this one's an example. It's got parents and grandparents. So let's open up those quickly. So these are the two parents. So if you recall, the toad and that spabbit too. And then its grandparents was spider and the rabbit. Cool. So yeah, so that was the spider and the rabbit that was used to make the spabbit, and then the spabbit and the toad used to make the toida. All right. What else? So I mentioned the cross-chain stuff. So yeah, one thing we wanted to do, so those who have been with us for a while know about our links to Phantasma chain, which is a great chain. But then also, we've kind of experienced some interruptions in the past, which were not great for anyone. But also, it's kind of cross-chain swapping is a fantastic feature to have. So we've got a feature where we can bridge creatures between different chains. It doesn't work on these test versions of these items, so it won't work with this one right now. But I can show you some that we've done with one of our other creatures. This is our test creature contract. But essentially, you can bridge from Phantasma to Ethereum or BSC, and then back again. And then that's going to be good for a few different reasons. So obviously, for people who, as I said, it's both ways. It's bi-directional. So people who buy these in Pavilion on Phantasma chain, they can send it to BSC or Ethereum, then send them to other platforms, or vice versa. If people buy these on other platforms and want to send them back to Pavilion to play them use them in the game, or like play them or stake them, then they can do that. Let me just double check our stream. Okay, so you can sort of see here. So this is one of our examples of one of our NFTs that we've minted and sent to bridge to. This one's on BSC. Yeah, BSC. You see it. Yeah, it's up behind the Wonderman Nation graphic at the top, but it's on the BSC network. And it's got some details about who the toad is. Some of the stuff is behind our graphics here, but you can see what abilities it has, and you can see what stats it has for each level. You can see when this one was born. You can see about the Pavilion NFT. You can see about the contract address and token IDs, etc. And oh yeah, there you can see that it's on the BNB chain. Yeah, so cross-platform bridging. You might notice, like see on this one here. So the way these stats work is these contracts look at like the sort of contract that creates all the creatures and then does an average about the active creatures. So we've gone through a few different processes of like having one contract for all Wonderman items versus having one contract for just the creatures and then another one for the food and another one for ship parts, etc. So that stats aren't shared across all of the different items. Okay. All right. So that's kind of creature breeding. I guess before I jump off this creatures and we start looking at the game, I just kind of want to mention the creature breeding stuff. So I mentioned before, like the crèching. So one thing that we like with this new design for the crèching is that you get to influence the creatures and how they develop and evolve. And we've got some really cool ideas for how all that's going to work, so we're kind of excited to share that. But one thing that we kind of like is that if you use the example of the real world for, say for horse racing, we've got someone who owns horses and races horses, and there's someone in the middle potentially who breeds the horses, so they get the two different horses and then they know how to breed them in special ways. We like the idea of making that another sort of service inside the ecosystem, so people can stake creatures to send them to the game and the live market, so the game for them to play them or the live marketplace for them or other people to play with them. But another version of that is to stake the creatures for breeding, so somebody else can come in and have specific knowledge around how to breed and how to take care of creatures to kind of make them sort of grow and be raised in a certain way and get the best outcomes for them. So yeah, people can stake them and have breeding. So that whole kind of crèching thing kind of really kind of lends into this new creature breeding system. Okay, so I think let me just double check my notes, make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, okay, that's it. All right. So I guess without further ado, let's jump into a battle. And then in the battle we can play with some of our Genesis creatures, and we can play with some of our new bred creatures. Okay, let me just make sure that's all looking good in the OBS. Yeah, cool. All right, so okay, so look, one thing I'll mention again is that throughout development, so basically since we started development on this build, sort of version 2, our new tech stack build, has been working with the front end, back end the whole time. So it's always been live. So when I play this now, I've got to play it against two different clients that are talking to the server. So I'm going to be playing on two different screens. So you'll be seeing me switch along, switch my head to look at each one as I play, and also it can time out. So I've got to like talk and like try to like not go too slow, but I can always just end the battle. Okay, so this one we got our Wonderman team pick, so you remember that from the original game design and the white paper. So I've chosen the Wonderman team. So I'm going to choose a starting creature. So I've got my creatures and I've got marketplace creatures. I'm going to choose one of our newer creatures. Let's choose the Octbird. All right, this one over here. Cool. For some reason, some of these thumbnails aren't coming in. These thumbnails have populated before, so I apologize for that. Let's go to the live marketplace and see what we've got. Some staked creatures here that we can use. Let's maybe bring in another bird-like creature, like the Fugel. So that's obviously a wasp and a bird. I think that's all I can see there. All right, let's go our. Let's go beetle for some defense. Let's go back to my creatures. Let's choose. Whoops! I accidentally clicked that. Okay, I'll choose one of our new creatures next time, and I'll choose a spider. Why not? We have a lot of birds actually. I'll just go a straight up spider. Okay, for the next creature here, I want to use one of our new creatures, the Twitter 3. I'll choose him. So hopefully he loads in fine. Yep, cool. There's our Twitter. All right. So yeah, as I said, this is all connecting to the back end. So I've got a timer on this, so I don't want to ideally just like trying to let this time out. So I'll just kind of make some moves in the background as I chat. Okay, so we've got 3 creatures per team. I think everyone is pretty aware of that. We're playing around with ideas around having more than 1 creature per team. So if we would move, for some reason I've got a bug here where I can't select one of these creatures, so I'll just kind of wait for that to time out and I'll have another turn. Yeah, so playing around with different options around having different team sizes. So having 3 player, 3 creature, 4 creature, 5 creature teams. You can see here with the Wonderman team, we've got more of a chance of getting certain parts, ship parts. Alright, so I'm going to start this battle again. I can't select my other team to move, so I do have a bug that's cropped up in this one. So my apologies for that. Come on, guys. Alright, that's alright. We can just start the battle again. Okay, so no hit points taken that round. Okay. We've got a few different ways I can demo this. So if this bug crops up again, I can demo it another way. So that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, I'll select the hometown team in this case. Okay, let's select some creatures. That's a snail and a spider. And we'll get a bird spider on that team. What else? A rabbit and a snail, but the opposite direction to the other team member there. Which one? Let's go tighter. Let's go spider. Okay, so unfortunately, for some reason, I do have a bug in this at the moment. So let me just go to let me quit that one. Go. All right, take 3. All right, let's choose Wonderman team. Okay, so I'm using a different account over there. This is one of our development accounts that's not tied to Pavilion. So it's got a lot more creatures because we've been using it for longer. Okay, so toad, let's go an octopus, snake, let's go a snail, let's do our bird octopus, and our beetle spider. Okay. Alright, so with a bit of luck, we should be all good. Okay, so I've selected my bird to move. Actually, I'll select the octopus maybe to start. So you can see here. So I selected my octopus to move. So you can see this one's a ground-based creature, so I can move on all the ground squares and not into the air. So I'm going to move the octopus down behind, up here, sorry, behind this rock, so it gets a bit of a defensive bonus. Okay, on my other one here, I can select it. Okay, cool. All right, so now I select my beetle spider. So again, I can't select the air cells here, these grid cells. I can only move around on the ground. So I'm going to move him behind this mushroom over here. Okay, selecting my bird. Okay, so the bird, as you can see, he can move on all the ground squares, but he can move also on the air squares. So I'll move him up there. Snail, which one am I going to do? Let's do, I might move my snake into a position here to use one of the dynamic props. So you can move the snake over here. You can sort of see there's different icons here to, showing you where you can go into defensive positions. Then also these little sort of spear icons show you where you can do environmental actions. And I'll move my toad into a perfect position over here. Perfect for someone, maybe not him so much. All right. So before I sort of like show off some of those things, so this is our environment, which you would recognize from the screenshots and concepts. This has all been done in data. I can sort of show people some of that in this video, but I might show it in a different video, it might be better. But essentially, like, all of these props and environment items are all separate pieces that are all done elsewhere. These aren't all just put into the engine and done by hand. These are all done in data. So we essentially feed an image and we feed grid cells X and Y, and then in another sheet we can put the different props in different spots so that we can easily swap props around. So it's not hand authored, it's kind of data driven, so we can just so the designer essentially can go into there and sort of change things around as they want to. So it's kind of more flexible long term. So let's do a few attacks on each other. Okay, so let's do snail attack. So the snail is quite a defensive character. Has less offensive hit points typically, but obviously there's like a bit of random chance, and the toad doesn't have great defensive points, so he actually made quite a good hit on him. Let's choose the bird, just do a standard hit attack on the snail. Right, so as you saw, like, the snail's got great defensive capabilities and he's kind of a distance away, so he protected himself quite well from that hit. Let's do one of the actions. So let's do the snake. He's sitting in the right spot for the boulder, and the toad is in the perfect spot for the boulder roll. So you can select the action icon there, select the roll, and then select the boulder to be rolled. So environmental actions, they're really kind of hard to pull off. You've got to have someone who's like either directly beneath the statue where it's going to fall, or directly in the line of the boulder. So if somebody gets in that way, it's basically a direct kill. So it's an instant death. Let's move our, actually before I move the octopus, let's do one of our items. Let's do the shrink ray on the snail. Okay, so doing the shrink ray on the snail means that it has a bit of a double whammy for a while. So it's got less hit points when it attacks, and less defensive points when it defends against an attack. So you can see there the snail trying to hit the octopus in cover. The snail's got the octopus has got the double whammy of having like in defensive in a cover position, and the snail having like lower attack points. Okay, so let's attack with the bird. Let's attack the snail. Okay, so the bird took off more hit points from the snail that time. Let's have the beetle spider attacking the octopus. So yeah, compared to the snail, you saw that the beetle spider had it's not been shrunk, and it's got higher attack points than the snail anyway, so it took more hit points off the octopus. Okay, let's move the octopus out of cover and put him on the path here. Okay, let's bring the snake into the fray. Maybe let's move it a bit closer up. So you can see you can use quite a bit of the map. So it goes from like all the way to the right to the left. Let's bring him here. He got himself a donut. Okay, let's have the bird attack the snake. So I mentioned here, so we've got, like, you can see there's a red ring and a white ring, so we're still adjusting these distances, but within the white ring is anywhere that the bird can attack. But these rings here are a bit of an example. So within the red ring, the bird's got maximum attack, and up until sort of the edge of the white ring, it's got less and less attack capability. So yeah, so you can hit for a longer distance, but you've got, because like the attack's coming from a longer distance, the defending creature has a higher ability of defending against that attack. Okay, let's have snake versus the octopus. You can see he did a pretty good hit there. Octopus against the snake, he should. The snake got lucky there. So the snakes are quite fast, but the octopus do have pretty good attack abilities as well. So with every hit, there's always like a random chance that a creature can dodge and evade that. Okay, so let's move the bird a bit closer. We can put him into cover as well. Let's move our beetle out of cover so he's closer for attack. Right, so now again that the beetle's out of cover, the octopus, and they're quite close, the octopus gets quite a good hit on him. Let's leave the snake there and do a hit on the octopus. So the snake's knocked out the octopus. Okay, so it's just the bird left. Let's see if you can get this back a bit. Okay, so yeah, bird's taken out that creature. So again, with the snail with lower hit points and the bird in cover, it should have a pretty low chance of getting a hit, as we just saw. But the bird on the snail basically very much nearly knocked it out. Let's check on the snail. On the snake. On the bird, yeah, similar again. Like the bird has quite a good sort of speed ability. So it's hard to take a bird out when it's in cover currently. Let's move these out so they're a bit closer. Let's try the bird from within cover at a closer distance. The snake within, not in cover, but closer. So he managed with a bit of more sort of like closing that gap. He was able to actually inflict a bit of damage onto the bird. And then sort of out in the open, these characters will take massive hits on each other. Let's maybe see what we can get by shrinking the bird, just out of curiosity. Let's see how well it goes with the hit now. So there's a higher chance that the snake would dodge this, but yeah, it didn't have much energy left, so it didn't. Alright, so our players have just won the match, so let's just accept that. Okay, so you can see here post battle, you can see all the stats for each creature, like which ones had which energy at the end, which ones are knocked out, how many hits, how many misses, etc. And then we'll go to the player stats and the creature stats. Let's just exit full screen here. Alright, so here we have the two players. So in the end I used a different account to that one, but I used the 2211 account and the 22 account. So yeah, so each account you've got different stats. So your stats for breeding will affect, like, so the more breeding you do and the better your outcomes with breeding, the higher your breeding stat is going to be, which gives you then more opportunities to influence the breed. Okay, so just refreshed that. I probably should have pointed that out before, but I just refreshed that stat, that page, and you would have seen that the lifetime damage done and taken increased. This one, I don't think I've done any battles with this one since then. I did some breeding, so I think that stat just changed. But I can change this from 22 to, it was the other Garth account that just did the battle. Okay, so there's other Garth. So right now, I think it's probably pulling in the AI generated user account. So that one was just generated and delivered to us just now. We will have the ability for people to change those user icons as well and bring them in from Pavilion. All right, so let's have a look. So battle ID 33522. Battle ID 3522. So this is the battle that these two players just had with each other. So you see this account's got a whole lot more battles that it's done, wins and losses, a lot more damage than this one. Okay, let's go to, okay, so the next thing I'll show off is this battle ID. So this is essentially what we added to help diagnose some of the things we had. So we're looking at different round and creature battles at this point. So we're kind of looking at different ways we can have, like, you know, what is a round? Like if you've got two creatures on one team and one creature on that team, like what dictates a round? When do they end? What's the time limit, etc. So we've been using these battle IDs to kind of like diagnose some of those problems where one client might think a creature's already gone when it hasn't, right? So that's the feature that we added in the last weeks. Practice. No, that's not right. What's going on? Okay, let's go out of here. Okay, so let's go back to the game. So let's load up option A. Which one to use? Okay. Okay. All right. So let's have a look. We should be able to load this one in on this server here. Let's just start that from scratch. So in putting this onto our onto Pavilion the other day, we added some more security certificates. So hopefully this works. Yeah, that works. Okay, cool. So that option A, option B, option C thing that you saw before, that was a new bug with the essentially like the request for the battle IDs being blocked by the server. So 3522. Okay, so we've got it on, which tab was it? This one. So 3522. So we should see it in our list here. So you can see it, we can pick it out of the list, or we can actually just type battle IDs in there. So the cool thing about this is if you've played a battle with your own account, you'll be able to select that battle from a list and preview or replay your own battles. But you'll be able to also replay other people's battles. Okay, let me just make sure that's the back window. Yeah, cool. All right, let's just turn off the small window there so you can see this better. Okay, so all right, so this is the battle that we just did. So we can flick through this. So this is a really interesting feature. So firstly, it's been cool for us to develop stuff in-house, so we can sort of fix bugs as they come up. We can like look at the front end, look at the back end, and check out where bugs might have occurred. And then also, this is really good for people who want to stream online. You can use that. You can sort of replay battles, assess different battles to see what the strategies people have used are. Then also for validating battles, so people can jump online and play, but then like win Nectar and Wonder, obviously. But then our server wants to like make sure people aren't cheating. So if our server can take those battles and replay battles to make sure that everyone's doing the right thing, then yeah, then we can sort of we look at these replays ourselves and make sure that everything's valid. Okay, so I can just click through this. So I'm just using I can sort of like click on this thing down here. You can sort of see, but I'm just using the direction arrow keys as well. So I can just basically click through each action and replay this as it happened. So let's click through. So this is exactly the battle that we just did, as you can tell. So it just replays every single message that was sent to the server. I haven't mentioned fame. We just saw that the fame stat for the snail just went up. I didn't mention that earlier. So the fame stat is a new feature that we've added as well, which is essentially to do with broadcasting. There's a few different things, but we're going to use it for broadcasting. So as people have play more battles and become more famous in the game, then they get different abilities, and then if people join those battles and watch famous people play, then they get fame themselves, and it's just like a new sort of design we're playing with. Okay, so yeah, so we can basically just click through this one by one. Yeah, you can sort of, I think I'm in the way of the, let's see if I can kind of show it down here. I have to move a little bit, I might go off screen. But you kind of see like out of the actions, we've got like, that's action number 41, 42, 43, so I'm clicking through those forwards, and I can actually go backwards as well. So I can it kind of replays all of the items, so this is kind of like going back to how it started. Back to the start of the match. Unrolling the boulder, come back alive, etc, etc, etc. Cool. Alright, so that is basically it for our gameplay demo. So yeah, just kind of want to show everyone the game progress to date, give everyone an update and let everyone see that we've got the game there and it's coming along. Yeah, I'll go to the chat, see if there's any specific questions. I think there are going to be a lot of people kind of asking about timeline for release. So we're currently looking at, we originally set a 12-month dev cycle for this, which we then restarted. We got like 7-8 months in, and then we restarted. So it's still the same dev cycle, but restarted from then. So we're looking to release our creatures, NFT creature sale soon. So the creatures will go up for sale, and people can start breeding with them. So that'll be essentially the first release. So when the creatures come out, which is we're kind of working out, like obviously depending on market conditions, we want to make sure that like everyone's kind of getting the sort of like best timing for this. So it kind of does the best for the game and for the economy and for all of the early supporters. But the idea is that when the creatures go for sale, instantly when they get those creatures, they'll be able to bring them into Pavilion and then breed with them, and then use the breeding feature, the creating feature, etc. So that'll be essentially the release of, we'll be releasing the game in parts, but that'd be essentially the kind of the first full release of the game. So the creature breeding and creating in like a beta mode. At that point, we will probably want to give the community a little bit of time to play around with the breeding features, and then any creatures that are bred, give them some time to kind of grow them up and influence the breed, so they can kind of get their creatures ready for battle. And then basically once that's done, so it'll be some weeks after that, to be determined. Some weeks after that, the battle mode will go live as well. So we'll have people be able to bring their the creatures that they bought in, and then also the creatures that they've bred into the battles, and pit them against each other for battles. All right, so that's that. So that's probably So the sale probably looking at like a couple of months maybe. It's basically ready to go now. As you saw, the creatures are there. We've got all of our test creatures being able to breed and create new ones. So we've got all the back end technology done, and all of the art and front end technology done. And the creature breeding is there as well. We're still working on some features for the crèche mode, but the creature breeding, as you saw, is already there and fully working. So for running the sale, it's mostly kind of to do with like the marketing plan, the marketing team, and kind of coordinating with the platforms that are going to be helping us to release the creatures to you guys. So that's that. So yeah, like I might go to questions in the chat. I can see you guys have got quite a few. So I might just go from like bottom up on the chat, so that I'm not kind of digging too far back. So question here is, do creatures level up on chain over time, like speed and evasiveness? Do they level up on chain over time, like speed and evasiveness? Okay, so if you mean if by like over time you mean if you just sort of sit them there and don't battle with them, then no, they won't level up actually, sorry, no, the two parts of that. So if you've got a creature that's fully bred to adulthood and you're not battling it, then it won't kind of increase its stats over time, just get better and better if you're not doing anything with it. That's why we've got like the incentive to take your creatures into battle, to battle with them, or put them on the live marketplace so that other people can play with your creatures, and then your creatures can be increased in stats with other people playing with those creatures. So that's with a fully like an adult creature. With baby creatures, however, like yes, if you breed a creature and you got a baby, if you don't crèche it and bring it up in that sort of like Tamagotchi Sims kind of style game, then they will grow up themselves. That's our current design. We're still kind of toying with how that's going to work exactly. There's like some specifics we need to work out, but yes, they will grow up over time, so their stats will increase anyway. You don't have to do the crèching feature, but the crèching feature is more about for people who want to really influence that breed to go a certain direction. So baby creatures will level up to a point, but then when they reach adulthood, they'll stop. What else? What other questions are there? When will creature breeding be released? So yeah, so that creature breeding is ready to be released now. That's ready to go. That's more determined by the release on platform. So that's what we're trying to work out currently. So we're trying to work out a strategy to release these creatures in the best possible way. Like we could release them like tomorrow if we wanted to you guys, but ideally I think you guys would want us to kind of put a big launch behind that and do some marketing campaigns and get a bit of noise and attention on this. So that's what we're kind of working out at the moment. So we're trying to work out with our partners, our marketing team and our other partners, like what's the best thing we can do to kind of get the most noise, the most attention for this. So depending on what our platform partners and our marketing team say, things typically take a little bit longer than you expect, I guess. But we're kind of being told 8 to 12 weeks is what we've been told, and then it's kind of like been like that conversation's been happening for about 4 weeks already. So I don't know, like let's just say like a couple of months roughly. Plato News asks again, like, will they through battling? So that was referring to the other question. Do creatures level up on chain over time? Okay, so you mean okay, I get the question. So you're kind of asking, do they level up on chain through battling over time? Then the answer to that is yes. Yeah. Okay. What's the question here? Mr. Scatterfy game channel, will the creatures be in your Pavillion Hub, or can you swap them to your Phantasma wallet? Yeah, so they can be the cross chain and cross wallet. So yes, you can put them wherever you want. So so a bunch of those creatures will start like on Opensea or elsewhere, and then you can bring them into Phantasma, or you can put them into your Phantasma wallet. Yep, that's totally fine. Can we claim our tokens to Phantasma? Yes. So those tokens, like people who haven't swapped tokens out to BSC through our claim process that we did when Phantasma Chain was down, and you still have tokens in Phantasma, then your tokens will be in Pavilion ready to go when we release the creatures. And there will be some advantages for people. Like we want to like do a thank you for people who have just kept their tokens in Phantasma or on Phantasma in Pavilion ready to go for the release. So yes, they'll be usable, and there'll be some stuff you can do with them straight away. Yes, is finding Wonderman ship parts still a part of the game? Yes, it is. I think we actually saw in the demo one of the creatures in one of the early battles discovered a ship part. Yes, that's still in. So the shipbuilding part of the game is still being worked on. It's probably about sort of 50-ish% done. So we'll have that done. It's not our priority. Like the crèching is going to be our priority, and the battling is going to be the priority. But then the shipbuilding will be done after that. So yeah, that is still a work in progress. Yeah. Is any audio soundtrack set yet? Currently, we just have placeholder audio. We do have an audio designer already engaged to be doing some audio for this, but we'll be focusing on the audio closer to launch. What else is there? Cool, amazing. We waited for this. Glad you guys are happy to get some info finally. I like the replay feature. Thank you. Yeah, we're actually having a lot of fun with that too. It's been really cool. It's been so handy to debug. Like the fact that you can play a battle and just send a battle ID to someone on the development team and say, hey, just it's this battle, like it was this round, and like if I can get out of the way here, you can sort of like say which, like it was action number 32 where the bug was. So it's been really easy for us to debug. Yeah, and it'd be great, as I said, for people who want to pull the game apart and sort of figure out like the strategy for it. Another question, Soldier X, what's the average round length of time? That's a good question. I think at this point we're still kind of very much in just development mode, so it's kind of hard to say exactly. It's because the stats are going to change a lot. Right now, each round probably takes an average of about sort of 3 minutes, I would say, but that could really change. Yeah, cool. Reading the other comments, like, yeah, cool. I'm glad everyone's gotten a lot out of this already. As you can see, our game's basically done. Like, as you can sort of see as well, like it's basically there's like alpha, beta, and release. That's kind of the 3 stages in development. So we've definitely hit alpha here. We've got like core features in. So there's like, yeah, creatures have their stats, they have their abilities, they have attacking, dodging, they have using items, doing actions to dynamic props, have dynamic props working. So it's kind of really easy from here. Like a lot of the hard work is done from here. It's just kind of like adding more of those abilities in and then tuning them. So we're kind of at the coolest part. Like it's always a lot of technical challenges, kind of like getting this stuff set. But once you've got this stuff in there, it's easy to add the new stuff. Placement before attacks, yes, cool. Yeah, somebody asking for the battle video. Yes, you just got that. Yeah, so Joseph is saying it'd be cool to have a family tree view as well. Might be easier to share an image on socials too. Yeah, it's a really cool idea. Yeah, definitely easy for us to do. Like right now, we already know who the parents are. And the grandparents and great grandparents, etc. And we already can pull that data in. So yeah, I think a family tree thing is a good idea. I'll add that to the task list. Doesn't sound too hard. What else is there? Somebody said that they can't see the other screen behind me. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's kind of with a multiplayer game. It is a bit hard. I could make sort of both screens kind of like where I would like to sort of like just sort of be 50-50 of the screen that you can see, but then it kind of get a little bit too hard to sort of see your main client. So I think it was kind of, I just did it this way to sort of mostly see like one client and what's happening. So if people have feedback that they'd rather have both screens fully on screen both times, I'm happy to do that for future gameplay videos. What else does we have? Yeah, a lot of options in the breeding system already. Yes, we do. The breeding system is like, yeah, really fully fledged. I mean, it's essentially, look at games like your sort of Tamagotchi and other breeding games. Like it's actually, what we've got there is actually a whole game in and of itself. Like it's more than CryptoKitties as a sort of example, right? Like it's kind of breeding stats, abilities, the creation system. Like there's a whole lot there. It's kind of almost like a game into itself, which we've talked about from the start. We want to have like multiple different versions or multiple different sort of avenues for people to get into the game. So whether it's buying, staking, or doing the breeding, or doing the battling, or doing the space game, the arcade games. All right, that's basically it. I'll go back to the bottom of this stat here. Okay, looking through the comments. We do a leaderboard with all that data. Yes, we've got leaderboards already in Pavilion. So yes, that's how the leaderboards will be used. So we'll be using that same technology. We've got someone saying the game isn't finished and it's been almost 2 years. So yes, the game is not finished. That's correct. It's been almost 2 years. That's not correct. So we started this. It was a 12-month build. We started in Jan/Feb last year. And as we've been transparent with, we got 7 to 8 months in with that, and then we decided we didn't like the direction that was going with the tech pipeline and development pipeline. So we decided to start from scratch with that front end part of it. And so we've been starting again since July, August. So we're kind of currently like 7 to 8 months in again. So, and still with the same 12-month development pipeline. So we're basically on track now to where we would have wanted to have been the first time around. And I mentioned this in the last AMA as well. So for anyone who thinks that like that's weird, is maybe sort of like can maybe go off and do a little bit of game development research. So it's super common for games to try out development and technology pipelines and to get a period into development and then have to change for some reasons. It's like essentially we're trying to make a fun game, right? So the big sort of statement there is like trying to like find the fun. Finding the fun is not always easy. That's like it takes a lot of skill and time with doing game development to sort of like know where that direction is. And I can definitely point at lots of examples of games that I've worked on that I wasn't the creative director for, where the games were started again from scratch. So Far Cry was one of those. So I started on Far Cry. It was like August 2001. That was like an alien versus alien on the human, like on Earth, with sort of like humans kind of discovering these alien encampments and this alien kind of battle, and then with dinosaurs, etc. And that got sort of canned after about a year and a half. We had most of our creatures done and lots of environments done, and they got canned. Like the team and the publishers decided that actually this wasn't the direction. Let's start again from scratch, and then that became Far Cry, the next game, which was like very different to the first game. We started again. Half-Life did the same exact thing. They finished the game and then didn't release that, scrapped it, and sort of found the fun and then worked in that direction. I worked on a game called Transformers on the PS2. That was like 2003 or 2004 that came out. Exact same thing. They were like a year into dev, and then it got canned. They canned that version and started again. They sort of took the findings from the first version and pushed that forward into making a fun game. All of those games did amazingly well, and yeah, they kind of made the tough decision to like leave something that wasn't working and do something and find something that would work, right? So this is like totally not uncommon. All right. Oh, I see somebody else has already responded to that person. All right, yeah, cool. I mean, I can't really repeat that over and over again. So if you don't understand that that's a thing, then that's okay. I can't change your mind. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. All right, so yeah, that's it. Okay, I'll end the stream here. It's been an hour and a half. It's been a long kind of deep dive into the tech. I do realize it's been pretty in depth, but like I've tried to make this a bit of a development sort of 101 with the creature background. Talk about a bit of history, show the game, show the gameplay, show how it works on chain, show some of that pipeline as well. So hopefully everyone's gotten something good out of this. We wanted to sort of make a nice first demo. It's taken a little bit of time for us to kind of do this, but as I said, we wanted to like have a pretty stable build for everyone and have it look as we wanted it to look. I'll make a quick mention actually about like Nintendo. So it's something that Nintendo do that I really like, which is they don't ever release in development shots or information about their games. They basically just make a game, get it perfect, and then release it so that people don't sort of almost get the opportunity to kind of like see it in a half form and then find out about delays, and then people get upset about like, oh, it's going to be another 6 months, because if Nintendo want to make a good game, they want to make it good regardless of whether it takes a year or a year and a half or 2 years. They just release it when it's good. So yeah, so we'll kind of got a little bit of that sort of internal kind of philosophy ourselves as well. We don't like to sort of show things too early, and if things aren't fun, we like to sort of show people once we've got like a good solid direction. So yeah, I appreciate everyone's patience in watching this. We're still working really hard at making this happen, and we're enjoying ourselves while doing it. We're actually having a lot of fun on the Wonderman team making this game. So hopefully you can kind of see that, and that's coming through in the game, and we're going to make a great game for you all. So appreciate your patience, and look forward to doing another update with you guys when we get closer to the creature and creature breeding release, which isn't too far away now. So I'll speak to you guys, all you guys soon. All right, catch up.